I guess I could put myself in the middle. Could have a
Yes,
steak sandwich here.
that'd be
All
great.
right. And then I'll move that. And there we go. Hi, welcome everyone to another episode of the Rocket MSP Podcast. I'm Steve Taylor. I'm your host. And today I'm joined by Peter. How you done? And Brandon. I just got an M. I don't
Brandon
see your
Martins.
last name.
Martins.
Martin? Martins. Okay. So today's going to be interesting because I am going to try to beat you guys up a little bit. Um, Today we're going to talk about a secure RDP solution using TruGrid. And I hear RDP and I just go, ugh. Because who uses RDP, right?
I know.
Except for people that don't know what they're doing.
Exactly.
So so I'm going to beat you guys up a little bit about that, but I suspect that there's more that TruGrid can do than just a secure RDP, right?
Yes, a lot more.
Excellent. So let's just kind of dive right in. For those of you that are watching us live, feel free to post any questions or comments right here in the chat, and yeah, we'll just dive in. So let's get started by who are you guys? Peter, Brandon. I guess we should start with Peter. Can you tell me a little bit about yourself?
Oh, sure. Thank you. First of all, Steve, I want to thank you very much for giving us the audience here the opportunity to talk about ourselves, TruGrid, to the community. I myself, I have over 20 years experience in remote access technologies. I actually cut my teeth on a well-known enterprise technology called Citrix. Citrix, for those who know it, is mostly used by large organizations.
Very familiar with Citrix.
Yeah.
I used that myself as an MSP for a couple clients.
Exactly. So that's my expertise. I have a very strong background in it, and I've deployed the technologies for the largest organizations in the country, hospitals in Canada, United States, South America, pretty much all over the world. And the company I used to work for, we also actually worked on behalf of Citrix, and we will deploy it. They will send us to their large clients that have issues with Citrix and stuff. So it is actually the foundation of TruGrid. What I learned in my 20-year journey of deploying that technology is that for the mid-market finds Citrix very expensive and very complicated. So it takes weeks to deploy them, and you also require a lot of very high expertise to maintain the product. So myself and my co-founder, Jason, who's not on this call right now, I've known Jason for over 20 years as well. We met at a project that we were doing together for General Electric appliances in Louisville, about in 1999, I think. And we've been friends ever since. So he's a programmer by trade, and I'm an infrastructure guy. So he and I, we've been friends for those years, and we were just talking around 2016, late 2016, December. And I was just lamenting the fact that Citrix is very complicated, and I don't mind it. I make money, doing it, but I just kind of look at the mid-market and the MSP world, and I realized that not many MSPs are using Citrix. So I was just lamenting the fact that it would be nice to have a product that works well, simply, and affordable, and attractive to the MSP world and mid-market without requiring that extensive maintenance. And Jason jokingly said, well, you can fix that. I said, how do we fix that? He said, well, you're the expert. I'm a programmer. We can just get together and create this. So beginning first quarter of 2017, in the first 3 months, we developed an MVP, a minimally viable product. And we had a working product, and we say, you know what, let's start a company. And that's kind of how we began.
It's really cool.
Yeah.
All right. And how about you, Brandon? Tell me a little bit about yourself.
So I'm an account executive with TruGrid. I do a lot of sales and marketing. I was introduced to Peter back in, I believe, March or April of 2018, where he took me under his wing to bring me on to help him do sales with TruGrid. Our first actual event that we did was in California, the Citrix Synergy. event, and I knew very little about the product back then. I'm close to an expert now, but that show was actually a good learning experience, especially because Peter said, don't try to compare us to Citrix, where now we are getting Citrix customers, replacing Citrix with TruGrid. So I manage a few hundred MSP accounts. That's pretty much my specialty, and that's what I do. I manage their accounts, and I'm their salesperson. I'm their go-to guy for setting up appointments and getting them rolling.
That's very cool. All right, so let's talk a little bit about TruGrid. So secure RDP.
Yes.
Sounds kind of
hokey.
I'm still not sold.
I know.
So why do you think we need secure? I mean, is this basically you're just giving a different name to something like Screen Connect or TeamViewer or one of those tools like this? We're just using a proprietary thing, right? We're not using the Windows remote desktop, are we?
You are using the native RDP, but we're just making it more secure for you.
Okay, but RDP's got to be like the most insecure method of doing remote desktop. I mean, like we gotta leave ports open. We gotta do port forwarding in the firewall. You know, if you're gonna have multiple devices, now you got to customize the port, and now you have multiple ports open, exposing multiple devices. So
I know, Steve. It's
don't
crazy.
make me do RDP.
Why would anybody think of doing this? You know, anybody in their right mind? Well, that's why we exist. We exist to actually eliminate all those concerns that you just raised. You know, with TruGrid, you do not have to expose any port anywhere over the internet. Okay, that was the foundation. And I think to answer the broader question, why wouldn't anybody even think about RDP? I'm going to try to answer that first, right? As you all know, for remote access, it is the native built-in technology for Windows. If you want to do remote into a Windows organization, I can guarantee you, Steve, that many of the MSPs on this call today, once they enter a client environment, they probably use RDP to do all their connections internally. I know we have RMMs like for doing the remote connection from my endpoint at home or in the office to the client site. But once I'm there, RDP is very fluid. It's actually the fastest protocol you can get for doing remote access to Windows. So I'm going to start from there. I know we have a lot of time to talk about this, but that is the number one reason to use RDP. It is the fastest way in terms of all available remote protocols for connecting to Windows, whether it's TeamViewer, LogMeIn, even Citrix itself, RDP is the fastest. And I think many MSP will agree with that. That's the first reason to look to use RDP. Then I'll talk about security later on.
So let's talk about that. The fastest way. It's the fastest way for what? Are you saying it's the fastest way to connect? It's the fastest looking like. Is it it's the lowest bandwidth usage? Like what? The fastest what?
Fantastic. So all things being equal, meaning that from my location down to the remote environment, if we have the same available bandwidth, right? The same bandwidth. Mm-hmm. So, and if you have an array of options, whether it's RMM tools, RDP, or TeamViewer or LogMeIn, RDP will give you the best experience for moving around the screen, opening windows, closing them. All things being equal, RDP is the fastest because of remote FX and all the other enhancement that Microsoft has done to it. As a matter of fact, for those of you on the call today, you probably know Microsoft launched something called WVD, Windows Virtual Desktop in Azure.
Yeah,
they're betting a lot of things on that, and the foundation of the WVD is RDP. So RDP is not going anywhere.
It is.
Yes,
it is, and so that I mean, I was gonna try and slip that in there, but you already did, so that's good. All right, so. So Microsoft, so Microsoft does the RDP with the Windows WVD, the Windows Virtual Desktop, and I know that, and we actually had a pretty nice discussion about that a few weeks ago with Nerdio. Are you guys familiar with Nerdio?
I'm very familiar with. In fact, they are in the same state as we are in Illinois.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Very nice. So with Nerdio, they'll actually set up and deploy and configure and everything an entire WVD solution
Yes.
for MSPs and for MSP clients. So I get it. Okay, RDP is not bad, but I mean that's in an Azure environment.
Yeah.
So is the Azure environment secure like what you're doing, or is the Azure environment like having an open firewall
Y-
exposing an endpoint?
Yeah. So for those who are familiar with WVD in Azure, for example, they use a technique called reverse connect. Okay.
Okay.
We're using a similar technology. The only difference with ours is ours is hybrid. So in other words, if you need to connect to Windows machine behind any firewall, whether it's AWS, Azure, your Office PCs, Windows servers, data center, server room, and you want to use RDP for all those things, we're the only technology out there that will give you a hybrid connection without firewall exposure. You don't have to open any port on your firewall to do that.
Okay, so Hybrid Connect, that's built into Windows Server then I assume, that type of functionality?
So because RDP is a foundational technology in all Windows operating systems, except
Hmm.
for Windows Home. So every other version of Windows can host RDP session, okay? As a
Okay.
result, if you have a huge line, in fact, we have a lot of MSPs that are actually using our technology in place of RMM if they want to do work on remote systems without, and they need privacy. As you very well know, with most RMM products, they are mostly remote console products, right? Meaning that when you connect to them, other people that are present in front of the machine can see what you're doing with other tools like Splashtop, any other. I don't want to mention other vendors' name, but essentially, the LogMeIn type application are remote control, meaning that they are subject to privacy issues if the screen blanking doesn't work. RDP by default is a session-based technology, and nobody can see what you're doing. So it is the most private protocol by default. Okay, that's the first another benefit of RDP beyond the performance that we discussed earlier. So a lot of our MSP partners, if they want to do work on client systems where they don't need to shadow, the client doesn't need to see them, they rather use our tool because then they can do all their work in privacy without worrying about somebody watching what they're doing. So exactly. And so what I was trying to allude to is if from a single collection, which I'm going to show you during the demo session, if I need to connect to multiple Windows systems behind different firewalls in different data centers, different offices, different server rooms, different AWS cloud, whatever, TruGrid is the only one that can aggregate everything. So from a TruGrid app, you can actually connect to multiple RDP systems anywhere in the world, regardless of where they are, and still maintain data residency, which we're going to talk about if that were to be required.
Okay. Okay. Um, Still so many questions.
Yes.
So we won't name names, but you mentioned that yours does the private session,
Mhm.
and if we don't need to share the screen with the end user,
Mhm.
then this is the most secure version.
It is.
So you're basically implying that there is a chance that our tool, even though it may offer the checkbox for us to have blinking of the screen, so that way we have that privacy.
Mhm.
You're saying that there's a chance that it won't blink it out.
Yes, in fact, there have been many reports that are on Reddit with TeamViewer and several other tools where the screen blanking would fail. And that often happens when there's a conflict with the graphics card driver. So
Hmm.
it may work in most cases, but there are cases when it doesn't work. So if one of the things we learned during the pandemic, which we experienced our biggest growth last year, was we were asking people why they were coming to us. And the second reason, the most popular reason was VPN replacement, which we're going to talk about. But the second most popular reason that people told us was to replace TeamViewer and LogMeIn because of those privacy issues. So people suddenly had employees that had to work from home that usually did not work from home. And some of them were doing sensitive work, HR, CFO, CEOs, they needed to connect to their office PCs from home. And they initially started out handing out TeamViewer, Log Me In. They quickly realized that people that were in the office could see what they were doing when screen blanking failed. We had a bunch of customers that chose us for that reason. Yeah.
So let's back up a second,
Sure.
because I feel like I may have put in the cart before the horse. You know, we're getting really technical into this already. Well, or we're dipping our toes in, right?
Mhm.
But I think I need to know a little bit more about TruGrid
For sure.
before we dive into that. So it sounds like your company has been around for just a few years.
Yeah, so we started in 2017, but we went to market in July of 2018.
All right. So do you have any investors?
We do.
Okay.
Yeah. They're all private at this point, mostly friends and family and a few outsiders.
Okay.
Yeah.
So not like big private equity firms that own RMMs and PSAs and that kind of.
None of those yet.
Oh, not yet. So it's something that you wouldn't be opposed to in the future.
Whatever will enhance the future of TruGrid for the betterment of the MSP, we will entertain.
Okay.
Yes.
We'll come back to that one because I think that would be a real interesting conversation, my friend.
Okay.
All right. So the developers, it sounds like your co-founder, your partner in the business, is one of the main developers. I suspect you've got others, though. It's not just one guy doing all the development.
Oh, of course not. We have the entire company. We are 19 of us right now, and
Okay.
only 5 of us are non-technical. Well, I'm technical, but I consider myself part of sales with Brandon's team. So only 5 of us, maybe 6 of us, are non-technical. The rest of the 13 employees are all, related to product development, project management, lead techs, and lead developers, and Jason is a CTO who manages them.
Perfect. And we're talking about employees, or are there some 1099 contractors?
All of our anybody that touches the product from a technical standpoint, developers, they're all employees.
Awesome.
Yes.
Awesome. So where are your employees located? Are they all here in the country?
No, we have some in Western Ukraine.
Okay.
So Jason himself is based out of New York, who leads the team, and he frequently travels between United States and Ukraine. As a matter of fact, he has been in Ukraine office since the pandemic, just before the pandemic started. He flew out in January, and he's been there ever since.
That's insane. So I suspect he's from there or around there.
No, he's purebred American. He just
From Manhattan.
yeah. So
that's wow. I gotta say, like, that the idea of like practically moving to another country where I feel like, Ukraine, I don't feel like that is a predominantly English speaking country.
Western, that's why I mentioned Western Ukraine. So Western Ukraine is the pro-West version, the pro-West part of Ukraine. Is closest to Poland, and they're mostly EU centric in terms of thinking. And
got it.
Yeah, so most of the culture there is European centric. Yeah.
Okay. And I don't want to get into the politics of it because that'll start a whole thing. We don't need a thing, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, so it sounds like the part of Ukraine he moved into, while it might not be the native language, most of the people that he would run into at least know English.
Right. In fact, the city where we're at, Microsoft is there. All the big guys are there as well. Yeah, they have developers there. Yeah.
All right. So data. I don't. So I'll need to see the product to have a better understanding of like how it does what it does. But like, is there data in your product somewhere? Like, is this a web software as a service thing? Is it an app we install on our computers?
It's entirely SaaS based, but there's a component you install on your Windows environment for brokering the connection. And Yeah, the only data we store in our system in Azure, and by the way, our entire data is stored in the Azure East US with replication to other parts of Azure region, which for security I won't mention. But the only thing we have in our database from that client has a UPN, your login email address. And we only need that so we know how to call your two-factor, right? Because when you log in, we need to know how to call your two-factor information to prompt you. We don't know your password. We don't want to know your password. Your password stays in your AD environment for security.
So, data sovereignty. Are you at least able to guarantee that all of my data stays in Azure America?
Not only can we do that, we can also guarantee it for customers that are outside of United States. We have customers in Canada that are asking for data residency as well. We have customers in UAE, Australia, India.
Oh, UAE.
Germany.
Got it.
Yeah, UAE, Dubai, yes.
Germany,
And
Ireland.
go for it.
So,
Yeah.
and there are countries, there are companies in other countries that want to have guarantees that their data are within a certain region of Azure as well, it sounds like.
Exactly.
So you have flexibility to put our data wherever we need it to be.
Exactly. And
As long
thankfully,
as Azure has it.
exactly. So we do it and we do this because of the Azure platform, because it's global. So as long as Microsoft has an Azure region in your country, we can do data persistency there for your residency. Yes, that's how we do it.
Got it. So is your product zero knowledge?
I saw that. I don't know. Can you clarify what zero knowledge means for me? I know what zero trust is, but go ahead.
So zero knowledge, if I recall correctly, you have like zero knowledge of my identity, my client's identities, or any of our data.
Yeah, we don't have any knowledge of your data. The only thing we need to know is your login name. And that's because that allows us to check to see that you're a legit user. And then we fast forward and say, now enter your password. And that is checked against your Active Directory. So I don't know whether you would say that zero knowledge is knowing your UPN, right? Because we need to know that to log in through our cloud interface. So we may not be zero knowledge in that regard.
But you don't have any knowledge of the files that are on a client's computer,
Not at all.
Any of that. Okay.
We don't care. We don't want to know. Yeah.
But we do have to install a brokering agent onto every device that we want to connect to.
Not every device. Only so if you have Active Directory in your environment, and let's say you want to connect to 100 different Windows machines, you only need to install our brokering agent on one or two devices. So those one or two devices.
That way, if the device is on, it will help broker that connection across the network. But let's say we're in the middle of a pandemic and I need to be able to get connected to 100 remote devices across 3 counties, and everyone's got their device at home.
Mm-hmm.
Now everyone needs that brokering agent, right?
So the brokering agent sits where the RDP hosts are. So if those 3 different locations in the county are all on the same wide area network, you still need one.
I'm saying, like, let's say we've got 100 employees,
mm-hmm.
all 100 employees. It's March 2020.
Sure.
All 100 employees took their computers, they picked them up, and they took them home.
Mm-hmm.
And now me, the IT guy, I need to be able to provide some support
mm-hmm.
and log in and do a thing. And I like using RDP because they don't see what fancy codes and buttons I'm pushing, right?
Yes.
So there's no VPN or anything because everything they do is in the cloud.
Yes, that's true. So in the case that you just get, which is an unusual case, by the way, because most customers tend to use our product for work, not technical work, but to connect to their business applications, right? But in the case you gave, though, if you choose to use it for that purpose, then you need to install our Secure Connect agent on all the machines for IT to be able to remote in. But that's an unusual way to use it, but it's possible.
So you're saying that most of the time it's those 100 people are using secure RDP to connect to a couple of servers back at the main office.
Or connect to their PCs or their workstations. So we're compatible with Windows laptops, Macintosh, and even Chromebook and iPad. So the idea for TruGrid got really big when COVID hit was that there was a shortage of laptops for companies to produce for their employees. So then you're going to be using your home PC or your home laptop or possibly even your kid's Chromebook to do your work. And so that's where the security comes in with our Windows connector, our Chromebook connector, that makes it safe so that you don't have different viruses and ransomware jumping from your home network onto the company network.
Yeah. And Steve, if I may, let me tee up on what Brandon just said, right? So I told you earlier that the second most sought after reason why people came to us was to replace LogMeIn and Team. The number one reason, Steve, that people chose us during the pandemic was the fact that there are a bunch of employees that have physical PCs in their offices, okay? These are employees that normally would not work from home. They would do 9 to 5, then they go home. It's not because they currently work from home, but maybe their work just didn't demand it. All of a sudden now, because of the pandemic, they're still needed to work during 9 to 5, right? But now they had to do it from home. The company never made provision for them to have laptops. They have to use that physical PC.
Now they've got desktops at the office still.
Exactly.
So
rather than give those employees VPN, means you have to install VPN on computers you don't trust at the employee's home, which means your network is now exposed because every VPN, a remote endpoint, is an extension of your network. We all know that, right? Well, companies couldn't trust employees' personal device at home. They were looking for a secure RDP solution so that the employees could use any device, untrusted or otherwise, to connecting with our VPN. And that was the number one reason that people came to us. Over 60% of customers that we encountered, mostly MSPs too, MSPs that had customers where the VPN already exists, but the MSPs know I better not put my customer's VPN on Jenny's home PC that I don't know what's on there. I'm going to use TruGrid for that. That's one of the reasons.
As an admin, Steve, you would be able to remote into all of the company's employees' desktops to make any changes you want as well, and you could do that from home.
Exactly, from anywhere. Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah. All right, so it's interesting. I like what I hear so far. Obviously, I feel like we're coming out of the pandemic now, so I should have had you on like a year ago. But there are some states. I think New York is still pretty heavily restricted. For example, there's the states out there like Texas and Florida who are like, no more masks, yay. And then there's the states that are complete opposite, and it feels like it's still very much, maybe not shut down, but very much restricted. So I like this, and I think that this is going to help because some companies may decide that, my employees really can just work from home. My team's productivity has not really gone down that much. It hasn't gone down enough to where I feel like I'm getting ripped off. So maybe I could downsize the office space. Have a third of the space. Have some cubicles for people that would prefer to come in the office, and then just have a bunch of these desktops here. Just pile them all up in a corner somewhere and keep them powered on until we can afford to switch to Azure WVD or bring it in house or however we want to do it. Is that kind of what people are considering right now with you?
Brandon, want to talk about that?
Yeah, that's definitely from what we're hearing is that work from home is not going anywhere, no matter what happens with the pandemic. And another thing to remember too is that as a lot of employees are working from home right now, there's a lot of students and kids at home. that the parents have to actually be home right now because their schools aren't open. So as far as people working from home, that's not going away. And if you can save money by downsizing your buildings or your office space, I think that's going to happen. And I think I did read that productivity has went up since employees are working at home. So I think a lot was learned with the pandemic as far as letting employees work from home and kind of having not an open schedule, but manage themselves and manage their workload.
I'll give you an example of one of our largest customers in Arkansas. It's a manufacturing company. He told us that they have about 180 employees using our platform right now out of 500 because they're manufacturing. So most of the knowledge workers, they use our tool. He told us that before the pandemic, the owners of the company always made an excuse that work from home is not safe. They're not going to be able to allow it because it's not safe. So the pandemic forced them to find TruGrid. And once they deployed TruGrid, they've been adding people. They started out as being about 50 users, and they've been inching up throughout the pandemic. And what it told us is that the owners now realize that not only is remote access good for them, they're now able to attract employees that are out of state. So apparently there are a couple of employees that are very key to the company that needed to move out. And the one considering retaining them, now that they have that remote access capability, they've been able to retain them and have them work from anywhere. So one of the lessons of being able to work from anywhere is talent is doesn't have to be local anymore. Meaning that if you have an office in Arkansas and that's where your manufacturing plant is, but you have work that can be done from Ohio, there's no reason why you cannot hire that talent from Ohio. So what I think the pandemic has exposed is flexibility. It doesn't mean work from home would be the way to do things because it's actually not healthy, in my opinion. As human beings, there's a lot we gain from physical interaction with each other, from seeing you, from going to lunch with you, just interacting in your office. That should never go away. What we're hearing, though, is people are going to supplement that, meaning that rather than come to the office 5 days a week, maybe now it's 1 week in, 1 week off, or maybe 2 days a week in the office, 3 days at home, or vice versa. So the pandemic has revealed that for the large percent of the population where your work can be done from anywhere, you should definitely allow it to happen in a way that's productive for the company and the employees as well.
I want to add something in about that company as well. They were actually one of our first customers, and they were well under the radar because we used to offer 5 licenses for free.
That's true.
So they had the 5 licenses for free for years until the pandemic hit. But just like any other account, it has that plus button on the dashboard to add more licenses, and they just started adding licenses. So he had put it in place a while back, tested it out on the free version, and it was there for him and ready to go when the pandemic hit. So he did not get behind at all in any of his work. So he did really good.
Yeah.
That's really awesome. Okay, so does this product need some type of 2FA, MFA for us to connect to it?
Mandatory.
Yeah, it's mandatory.
It's built in already on our platform. Mm-hmm. We have our own authenticator in the App Store. You can use any authenticator you want, but with the TruGrid authenticator, it gives you push authentication and single sign-on.
Do you work with other solutions like Duo, or I know Authy also offers some push notification type stuff?
You don't need the Radius backend because Radius is already built into our platform, but you can use the mobile app of Duo, Authy, or even Google, MFA, or Microsoft to connect to scan the QR code during sign up and use it that way. Yeah, but you don't need to go and pay anybody for the Radius on the back end. So because it's mandatory, so we had to build it. We had to build it in because it's mandatory. So there's no way to use our product without having MFA. You cannot tell us that you don't want MFA.
I love it.
Yeah.
That is the type of security I'm talking about, guys.
Yes.
Anything else that we should know about security before I move on?
Definitely.
I think if you want to jump in, Peter, and tell them about the zero trust settings that are already set on the dashboard.
Yes.
I like zero trust.
Okay. So one of the things we learned too is, as you very well know with RDP, when you're remoting in, RDP allows all forms of device redirection, right? I want to map my microphone, my disk, my US, whatever it is you want to map. So we developed this just to we were thinking about the MSP. We always felt, look, MSPs are very busy. They have a lot on their hands. Rather than have things exposed, like meaning they're not as secure and having the MSP have to go reverse it, we did the opposite. We made it secure from the beginning, meaning that when the MSP sets up a new customer, by default, when the end users log into their remote machines or remote VMs or VDI or whatever, no device redirection other than keyboard and mouse is allowed. So your disk is not mapped. You cannot print to your printer at home. The MSP has to allow that. That's by default. MFA is also mandatory. You cannot use our system without MFA. We've had a few customers that say, well, we cannot force our employees to use their personal phones to do the MFA thing. So what we've done, we support desktop authenticators. So there are some free Chrome-based authenticator or Windows-based, so you can just download those, use that to scan your code initially, and your computer at home can be a second factor if you don't want to use your phone. But essentially, login and password alone is not sufficient to connect to our system. So, yeah, exactly. So for those who have, in fact, Brandon can talk about, we have a tool that help MSP discover whether their customers have stolen credentials. Brandon, go ahead and talk about that.
Yeah, we offer a free dark web scanning tool, similar to some of the other brands that are out there. The difference is ours is free, and anytime an MSP gets a new customer and the customer starts using our security RDP product, we automatically scan the credentials through the dark web, and then we notify them if there's a username or password that's being used on the dark web.
So we scan the UPN. So we scan the dark web for the UPN that we know that you're using to connect to us. If we see that in the dark web, we'll light up. There's an alert that will show to the MSP that, look, your customer's UPN is in the dark web. You better check to make sure that they're not using that password that we're going to uncover for you. Yes.
There's another thing that I see your tool does, and it's BitLocker.
Yes. Brandon.
So yeah, please talk to me about BitLocker.
So I'm sure, as you know, there's many encryption management tools out there. The problem is with them, they're all pretty difficult to manage and get set up. So say you have to be linked to Active Directory, all kinds of other stuff to get it going. With our tool, it works strictly with BitLocker. Whether it has TPM or no TPM, it'll still work. You'll just have to supply a password or a 4-digit code for the non-TPM machines. But we basically just supply an enrollment file, and that can be unique to a domain or just to an individual laptop. And once it's enrolled, you just send that out to the laptop. Once it's enrolled, it'll show up on your dashboard, and you click a button to encrypt it. We store the recovery key in the cloud. It's available on your dashboard at all times, and we provide a compliance report.
Exactly. And if I can add to that, Steve, this entire thing that Brandon just described, you can set up a whole new domain in 15 minutes. And the agent that we use, the IoT agent that we use to enroll the devices, supports RMMs. So if you have an RMM that can deploy an MSI file, we give you the quiet switch, the MSI exec switch, and you can just roll it out to hundreds of machines, and they will automatically enroll themselves. And you as an MSP go to the dashboard and just light it up and say, manage encryption, and it will grab the key. In fact, if those laptops are already encrypted and you don't have the key, as long as you have the login to the machine, our system, once you deploy the agent, it will grab the key for you and store it in. We store those in the Azure Key Vault, which is a completely separate HSM. HSM is a form of secure storage that you use to store information away from your database, so that, because when we developed this company, Jason is actually a cybersecurity expert too, my partner. So one of the decisions we made was, we're going to assume that we can get hacked. So Steve, you probably know anybody that says I cannot be hacked today is joking, right? So
I definitely can't be hacked.
Exactly. So we took the position that we can be hacked. So we say, okay, if we get hacked, how do we make sure our customers are protected? That's the reason why we don't store any passwords. We don't even store your keys in our database. So for BitLocker, once we enroll you, we use the Microsoft IoT Hub, which is part of the Microsoft Azure ecosystem, and we use the Azure Key Vault for storing those things. So every device, when they enroll, they're enrolling directly in the Microsoft IoT Hub. We have a different way of referencing them, and their keys are stored elsewhere. So when an MSP comes to a dashboard that's interfacing and getting the key, they're not getting that key from a database. They're getting it through orchestration, so that if somebody hacks our system, there's no key to steal. That's one of the things we built into our system.
But couldn't somebody still hack the MSP and then access TruGrid through the hack?
That's definitely possible, and that's why MFA is enforced and required. So for an MSP to be hacked, whoever's going to hack the MSP has to find a way to steal their login and password, and then steal their phone, which is not impossible, but it's a tall order.
No, it's not impossible. And let's be honest, if somebody really wants to hack you, you're going to get hacked, right?
Exactly.
It doesn't matter how secure you are.
Exactly.
With our product, though, it almost seems like you'd have to be tied up in front of your computer to get hacked. The hacker would have kidnapped you and your cell phone and your laptop.
Well, so with your 2FA, do you offer the text-based 2FA or only with an authenticator?
Only with authenticator, no SMS.
Okay. And can't the authenticator? I feel like authenticator can still get hacked somehow. I don't really understand it.
So let me explain that to you, Steve. In fact, I would be the first to tell you that anything can be hacked, right?
Well, sure.
However, so the goal of security then is to make it exceedingly difficult for the person that wants to hack you, so they can go find a softer target, right? So for that reason, we don't support SMS text, because we know it's easier to hack somebody's SMS than it is to, you have to put a malware in somebody's phone. And the way iPhones are developed is most apps are mostly sandboxed, okay? So that malware has to violate Apple's security protocol or Android's to go in and read your code. Again, not impossible. It is very possible. But somebody who's going to do that to you, they really are after you. we're going to be the least of their worries. Like a state actor, for example. If a state actor is after you, they're going to do a lot of stuff. But if it's a random guy who's just looking for someone to hack, we will not be an easy target for them because of mandatory MFA, because we don't support SMS text. It's all code-based, meaning the app is required or push authentication. So we thought about this at the onset to say, look, we know anybody can be hacked, but what can we do to protect our MSP partners and our customers to make it extremely difficult for anybody to go after them? And that's why we built all these dark web monitoring tools into our product. It's the reason why we enforce MFA. Is the reason why you, in fact, when you deploy a product, it's like you're invisible to the internet, because you don't need to punch any hole in your firewall for NAT to RDP. We don't.
If only we really were invisible to the internet.
What'd you say?
I said, if only we really were invisible to the internet.
Well, if you have a firewall that doesn't have any inbound ports open, the only way you can be compromised is to go and invite it in. So when you go and start doing web surfing, that's how you can invite stuff through email. So otherwise, if you have any exposed ports over your firewall, that can be a source of attack as well. So we help prevent that for remote access purposes. There are obviously other ways that people can be hacked, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's talk about everybody's favorite subject.
Sure.
Let's talk about pricing. Now, if I look at your website, TruGrid, TRUGrid.com, I see that you guys have public, like retail pricing, I'll call it. So let's talk about your retail pricing. $12 a month for a user with access up to 10 computers.
So that's our TruGrid basic version.
Yes.
That's more of like not a corporate version at all. It's for one customer that needs to access some computers. We do have some MSPs that use that for working on their customer stuff, but that's more of like just an individual plan, not for an MSP.
And for that one, no AD is required. You don't need Active Directory for that basic.
Okay.
For the business one, you do need Active Directory for the business version.
Got it. Okay. And for the business version, you're actually charging, instead of $12 a month for a user, you're charging $15 a month for a user. And there's a minimum of 10 users.
Yes, correct.
So now again, that's the business version. That's not the MSP version. So how does the MSP version work? Is there a minimum of like number of users or anything like that for an MSP?
There are minimum users. Right now that number is set at 20, but we definitely are flexible with that. So, but yes, right now the minimum's 20, but we definitely make exceptions.
And with that 20, that's 20 across however many clients, right?
Correct.
So we could have a single user at a client. We just have to have 20 users to start, essentially.
Yes, and then we also provide service providers with 5 free internal use licenses as well.
Very nice. It is nice to, drink your own Kool-Aid, so to speak. As long as it doesn't kill you. So I also see that the dark web monitoring is only included for MSPs.
Correct.
Yes.
And that is because that is a way for them to manage it. It is in a sense included on the corporate version, because any user that is going to be using our product and be put in our system will be scanned on the dark web. But there's not a function on the corporate version to manage that. It'll alert you and let you know that you need to change a password or username, but it doesn't give you a managing part. For the MSP plan, we actually give you a full dark web monitoring section where you can run full scans on full domains. Discovery scans where it'll tell you how many compromised there were, give you if there's like 100 compromised on there, it'll give you a list of between 10 or 15 for free that you can see. They'll give you the mask password and the username, why they're on there, hacking, social media. It's usually a lot of social media stuff these days. Mm-hmm. And then if they want to pay for a full year of monitoring, that comes in at around $85 per domain per year. But they wouldn't have to pay for that. Then we also offer a lot of literature and information, templates that all that stuff can be put in that explains to their customers why they're on the dark web, what they can do to be cautionary in the future and stuff. So they're not just handing them a list of names. It'll be actually doctored up really nice and make it look really good for you.
Yeah. We've had MSPs, Steve, that use the dark web as a door opener. So, for example, if they have a prospective client to go meet for the first time, they can pre-scan that customer domain ahead of the call. And we had one lady who's a customer that used an iPad for that purpose, where they were meeting with a client and said, "Oh, do you mind if we check and see whether your domain is secure?" They already knew that the domain wasn't secure, and then they, in front of the customer, they were able to do a check and see all the exposed UPNs and email address, and they pass without mask for security, but they use it as a selling tool.
And I gotta say, like, I think every MSP has at least 2 or 3 dark web, monitoring or whatever tools. Just because it's, let's be honest, it's gimmicky, and a lot of the vendors in the channel are starting to put it in their tool. Right. And I gotta say, I think that a company that is offering, for example, secure RDP, like, okay, the BitLocker management, that's pretty cool, but then when you start adding the dark web stuff, like, I feel like that's just almost a waste of development time. Like, why don't you take the time that you would have spent on the dark web stuff and just do something cooler with the RDP and the BitLocker and that type of stuff? Like,
I'm glad you brought that up. In fact, the reason why we created that dashboard was the only initial feature was just to alert you if the UPN your customers are using we find it on the dark web. That was all we were doing. But when we hit the road, when we went to market, one of the organizations we partnered with, the ASCII group, which we may be familiar with, and so we got a lot of the requests from initial customer partners that signed up with us that they wanted a full dashboard where they could just enter the domain of other customers that are not using TruGrid, and we just kind of offered it to them. Just, it's almost like when you have too many of your customers requesting the same thing, it's very hard to ignore. Okay. Yeah, so that's kind of why we did it.
So you actually got a bunch of requests. You weren't like, hey, what would be cool?
Well, no,
you weren't just like sitting around. You weren't just sitting around a table one day.
No, it didn't come from
ideas off of each other.
Mm-hmm. It came from
but another part of it too is it was involved with our CNAME branding. So when you set up an MSP account with us on your portal, you'll have an option to brand your portal. And in doing that, it provides a unique link to a dark web monitoring page for you with your logo on it. So then you can have that link posted on your website. And then if say, hey, do you want to check your company on the dark web? They click on it. They put in their domain. It runs a scan, tells them how many compromised they are. And it says, if you want to get a report, put in your actual email address. And at that time, it sends that domain to the MSP's dashboard so they can follow up with them and possibly sell some services to them.
Exactly. But to answer Steve's question, though, this part of this were all driven by our initial contact with ASCII partners. They drove it very hard. And it became difficult to just ignore them when you have people asking for the same thing every day. But you are right. It's not normally what we would think of doing. But at some point, you have to be a little bit responsive to your customers.
Yeah, and I will say the fad has kind of calmed down. It's not something that we even bring up a lot of times. Yeah. But if it gets brought up, we show it to them during demos and stuff.
The biggest part of our product, those three products that we talked, the secure RDP, BitLocker management, and the dark web, by far, our secure RDP is the most widely used product.
Yeah, sure.
What we find, though, is once some MSPs adopt the secure RDP, because the device management piece for BitLocker is there in the interface, they just start adding devices.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
Because it's there. So that's one of the advantages of having an integrated solution. Yeah.
Well, let's get a demo going. Let me see this. Oh. I suspect it's not all that difficult. Like, you share a screen, you click a button, you're connected, and we're done, right? Like,
yeah. So what I'm going to do, take you through just the architectural design of the technology, just because the audience is fairly technical, right? So I want them to understand how it works, right? And then I'll do a demo to showcase exactly how it works.
Yeah, and I want to jump in real quick about the pricing again.
Sure.
So we do not offer MSP pricing unless we are approached by an MSP or we approach them. So if any MSP wants to get pricing from us, they can either go to our website and do a partner application where we will check and make sure they're an MSP and talk with them and then get them pricing, or they can email me, Brandon@TruGrid.com or sales@TruGrid.com. We'll be more than happy to give them pricing. And we do offer different pricing options for different various groups, whether if you're affiliated with the 20, ASCII, Robbins, Channel Pro, Everything MSP, Tech Tribe. So we got a lot of groups that we do work with that offer a lot of support as well. And then we give them special discounts as well.
For the people that are associated with multiple groups, is it like going to the grocery store? Can we stack the coupons and get a bigger discount?
It's actually exactly not like that. You get the best discount that you can find.
Good stuff.
Doesn't hurt to ask. Doesn't hurt to ask.
So obviously for the protection of the MSPs, we want to protect their ability to make money with the product. That's why we don't publicize the price, right? So, but to answer your question, if you end up being part of multiple organizations, you get the best deal out there. That's what you're going to get. Yeah.
All right. Sounds good.
Yes. Okay.
All right, Peter. Let's take a look at the architecture here.
Fantastic. So I'm going to share my screen. I'm doing it for the first time, so hopefully I'm going to do it correctly.
So, not a problem.
Okay, so screen number 3. Let me know when you can see my screen.
I can. I see us, and now I see something else.
Fantastic. So this is the architecture of TruGrid. So I'm going to take you through this. I don't believe that this tool has annotation, does it? We don't have an annotation tool with this technology. I was going to draw some lines and stuff. Okay. Can you still hear me or not?
I can hear you.
Okay, good. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and I want to be able to annotate. So I will use my, what do you call it? My Snagit, so I can draw lines.
Okay.
Steve, if you don't mind. So
no problem.
yeah,
Go for it.
Let me do this over here. So everybody should be able to see my Snagit right now. So I'm going to start by dividing this design into 3 sections. So those are firewalls. So on the far right of the screen there is where you have the secure location that you want remote users to access. So typically that would be an office network, data center, or cloud, and they will contain any version of Windows operating systems. Believe it or not, Steve, when we, on the dashboard section where you can see your report, we have customer using Windows 2003. They're using our technology to access 2003. I've seen Windows XP and I've seen one Windows ME, Windows Me. But in any event, as long as it's an RDS host,
a crime.
I know it's a crime, but so I've seen it in the reporting system. So in any event, if it's a Windows host, we can connect to it securely without any firewall exposure, right? So, and to do that, you install this Sentry software. This is a broker technology. You can install it on a member server or a domain controller, but I'll come back to that, okay? On the far left is typically where you have your remote workers. These are typically people, you know, they may be coming from untrusted devices or untrusted locations, Wi-Fi network in the house, and they could be using any of these popular devices, Windows, Macintosh, iPhone, iPad, Android, and Chromebook. And we have a secure connector for all of those operating systems, okay? And this is our own infrastructure in the Cloud Shield. So the Cloud Shield is essentially the engine behind the dashboard. So for the MSP, for example, it's a multi-tenant dashboard. So that multi-tenant dashboard has this engine behind it. And what they have is end-to-end encryption in all communication. We shield Active Directory from brute force attacks, and I'm going to explain that. We have multi-factor integrated into the solution, and we do internal threat detection and also external penetration testing for our own security and the security of our customers. And also importantly, we protect our customers' firewall. What that means is that with that technology, you don't have to punch any hole inbound into your RDP system. So that's how we protect your firewall. So to deploy the solution, a customer or an MSP, after they register, will simply install the Sentry software inside a trusted network behind the firewall. And once that's done, the Sentry software will make a reverse connection into the cloud instance of the domain, okay? So every domain has a unique security code. During the installation of the Sentry, you put that code in, it knows which domain it needs to connect to in the Cloud Shield, okay? And when the end user is about to log in for the first time, they would download and install their secure connector, and that would also make a connection to the Cloud Shield. How does it know? Based on the UPN. So when I log in as Peter at mydomain.com, it knows what my Cloud Shield is, and it'll be talking to. So this is very important to note. That means that for a remote user, they cannot see the inside of a customer's network until after they authenticate. Unlike most systems that are gateway-based, where you're hosting your own gateway, you're already at the doorstep. So if any hacking is going to happen or DDoS attack, it will begin to happen at your doorstep. In this case, nobody knows you exist. Nobody knows where you are. The Cloud Shield acts as your initial security broker or security blanket, almost like Cloudflare. For those who know Cloudflare for protecting web services, that's kind of how this.
Cloudflare.
Yeah, Cloudflare, exactly.
I'm actually logged into it right now.
Fantastic. So to use our analogy, this is how Cloud Shield operates. We essentially wall off your Active Directory environment. Nobody can know. So when I log in here in the secure connector, I put my login and password. The Cloud Shield will now say, oh, I know what your UPN is. But before I send your encrypted credential to Sentry to pass on to AD, give me your MFA. If that MFA fails, we're not going to do anything with that login and password. So this is how, for example, we protect Active Directory from brute force attacks, meaning that if anybody knows you're using TruGrid and they go to the dark web and buy stolen credentials, they will not be able to use it successfully against TruGrid. This is because we would challenge the user for the MFA code before we accept the login and password to be sent to Sentry. Once that MFA is successful, CloudShield will now say, okay, I know you're legit. Let me ask Sentry if to pass on your credentials encrypted form to AD for validation. So Sentry gets the information, passes it to AD. If it's correct, AD will say, oh, this guy is legit. Sentry will then say, okay, Mr. AD, tell me how many desktops Peter has been allowed to access. Once AD gives the information to Sentry, Sentry will deliver it into a secure connector and say, oh, Peter, you're successfully logged in. Here are the applications or the PCs that you can access. So that's pretty much the synchronization, the orchestration of the technology. Once that happens, now when I'm ready to log in, all I have to do is I will click my desktop in here. Remember, there's no firewall port open. Instantly, CloudShield is sending a request to Sentry to come out and handshake with me. And that's how the connection is brokered. So we use WebSockets for our technology. We don't use IPsec VPN because there's no IPsec, no trust between this location and this location. This guy is the only one that can allow it in, and it's only going to allow access to that RDP server without any firewall exposure. And that's kind of how it works. And then this is also how we maintain data residency. So if the two users, this person on the left, remote worker, and the person on the right are in Canada, all this traffic stays in Canada. If they're in Australia, all the traffic stays in Australia. The only time the traffic will cause boundaries is if you're in Canada and you're connecting to a system in the United States. Obviously, we have to kind of tunnel the connection through the Azure relay to make it happen for you. So in a nutshell, that's the architecture, but that was a mouthful. I'm going to pause. Steve may have some questions for me before I show the demo. Steve?
No, honestly, this all makes pretty good sense. I think just seeing the demo would answer any questions I might have in regards to, like, how do I set up the Sentry? How do I set up the connector? That type of stuff, you know? So
I agree. So for this demo, I'm going to go into an Active Directory environment and show the Sentry and what it does. I would then create a unique account. I'm going to use Steve as my test user, if Steve doesn't mind. And sure. I would then come back to my PC at home here and connect as Steve. So you're going to see the first time end user login experience as well. Okay. So to do that, I'm going to minimize this and bring forward a remote server. So here you see a backend environment. And what I'm showing you here could be a member server on an Active Directory network, or it can also be a domain controller. It's your choice what you want to use. The only requirement is it must be joined to an Active Directory. And so the Sentry software itself is less than 20 megs. I just opened the add remove programs. As you can see, and let me verify, can everybody see my screen? Steve, can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. So as you can see here, this Sentry software install is actually less than 20 megs. It takes about 2 minutes to install. And during the installation, you're going to ask for activation code. You provide it. And then once it's done, it creates 2 security groups in Active Directory under the user container. One is a TG-computers group. The other one is a TG-users group. And these security groups act as filters. So in other words, okay, the reason what that means is that when you log into the CloudShield dashboard, we don't want to just show all the machines on your network for you to allocate. We want you to.
I think I'm already understanding.
Exactly. Yeah. We want you to. Go ahead, Steve.
So basically, you've created these 2 groups, and TruGrid, your technology, will basically be able to see the users in the TG users group and the computers in the computers group that you've created. So we may not want every single person within the organization to have access to this or to have access to every single computer. We may just want them to have access to the RDP server, the terminal server, or maybe a file server, or whatever, right?
You got
And
it.
then the same would apply to the users. You don't want every user, maybe just the remote workers.
You got it. Exactly. So these security groups allow you, the MSP or the IT admin, to determine which machines can be allocated to whom on the dashboard. So if a machine is not here, you will not see it on your dashboard. If a user is not in this container, you will not see that user on your dashboard to be assigned to a device. Okay. So you open that and you dump in all your computers that you want to allow access to. But we also support pooling. So if you have in a VDI environment where you have 10 identical machines and you have 10 users who you want to randomly connect to any of available machines, you could do that. You could just create a security group and put those machines in there. And when people log in, if you're assigning them, they can see an Office PC, but behind that Office PC is obviously random access computers that they can be connected to. The same thing can be done for terminal servers. Many organizations run ERP software, whether it's Great Place Accounting or Sage software or QuickBooks. They may have it hosted on 2 servers, and you don't want customers and users to see 2 icons for QuickBooks. You want them to see 1. So you could pool your terminal servers behind a security group, and that's where the apps are going to come from. Okay, so that's the purpose of that. And in the user container, you could just add your individual users, or you can add a security group as well. So that rather than if there's one app that everybody needs to be connected to, or a terminal server that everybody needs, you don't have to do one. You don't have to say, oh, let me select Steve, and this is the terminal server. Let me select Brandon. No, you could just say, these are all my Office users, and they need access to this terminal server, and it's done. That's what that's for. Okay. So now I'm going to go ahead and create an account. I'm going to call it Steve. Okay. I'm just going to say Q for unknown. So Steve is a login name, and it has to be an FQDN, like .com, .net, whatever it is. So this user is going to be Steve at easyrds.com. I'm going to give Steve a password. And that's it. So the next thing I'm going to do is Steve needs to belong to this security group.
Oh, by the way, what's the password you gave me?
I'll let you know later on. Well, actually, you know what? You know what? This is an interesting idea. I think I should let you do the connection. How's that?
Well, I'm on a Mac. I don't even have remote desktop on here, do I?
Well, we support Mac devices, but I like to showcase our Windows software. Okay, so I would drive if you don't mind. Okay, so anyways, I've created the account. I put Steve in that users group. So let me log into the dashboard. This is the CloudSheet dashboard I'm going to log into right now as the admin. And remember, all of our login requires 2-factor.
Yeah.
There's no way to
I gotta say, I really like that we don't have to like log in and then be prompted for the code. That bothers
me. I know. Well, you'll be surprised. We developed that when we first rolled out. Some MSPs that we're working with, they had physician customers, doctors, and they just push back on codes. So to answer your other question, why not spend your time enhancing stuff that related to the product? If we were going to make MFA mandatory, but people were pushing back because they were typing codes, they would say, you know what, let's go develop our own authenticator app. That's kind of what we did. So here I am. This is a multi-tenant dashboard, okay? And I'm going to go, so in other words, for a service provider, they can go into the customer management, go to client domains and add other customers and manage them from here. For this purpose, I'm setting up the environment for an MSP. So I'm going to go to company management. I'm going to go to resource assignments. And then I'm going to come here and assign a machine to Steve. Should be here somewhere, right there. And I'm going to save it. That's how easy it is. But while I'm here, I'm also going to assign some applications. So we also support a remote app, Steve. In other words, if you have a situation where you don't want to connect someone to a full desktop, we can let you connect them to a single app in the environment, as long as the app runs on a Windows server. So for this purpose, I'm going to choose, let me see if I can find Microsoft Word. Yes. And I'm going to assign that to Steve. And let me also find QuickBooks. Assign it to Steve. And that's it. So in the last 5 or 7 minutes, I've shown you what the Sentry looks like installed. You create 2 security groups. You populate security groups with computers for the TG Computer 1, and then you put users in the TG users group. And I just created a test account. I've logged into the dashboard to assign resources to Steve. In this case, 1 PC and 2 applications. So the next step is for me to go back to my computer at home now and show you the experience of Steve logging in for the first time. Before I do that, though, Steve, I want to pause and see if you have any questions for me.
No. I still might want to beat you up because this seems like a lot of work to do something that I could just deploy TeamViewer to do.
Well, but so remember with TeamViewer, you have to go install the agent on every machine you want to connect to, right? So in this situation,
Yeah, but that's so I guess for me as an MSP,
yes,
that's easily done because I've got an RMM. I can deploy the TeamViewer agent to all the machines I want to run,
yes,
and all's right with the world. Everyone's happy. I can add additional users if I want to give access to machines for end users at the clients.
yes.
Um,
So I'm glad you brought that up. So remember what I told you earlier. So people came to us for on the remote control side for 2 reasons. I talked about the privacy concern issue, which is still evident, but it's a secondary reason why people came to us. Some people needed to allow access to terminal server for multiple users. One customer had about 30 users. They need to run an ERP app on a terminal server. You cannot use TeamViewer for that because TeamViewer is console-based. If you use TeamViewer for that, every person that logs into that will see everybody's stuff because it's console-based. Because ours is RDP-based, session-based, and you want that security, we have the solution for that. Yeah.
okay.
So yeah.
But at that point, why aren't they just using TS Remote app?
Well, it's just another application. So what really matters then is whether or not the other 2 you mentioned, is just a TS Remote app? You mean that the built-in by Microsoft?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So many MSPs don't like the complexity of having to deploy RD Web, RD Gateway, RD Broker, 3 different components, right? And then you still have to punch a hole in the firewall to 443. And then you have to go source your own MFA. Think about that. So you have to go find your radio server. Whereas with our technology, it's all built in. You don't need RD Web. The Cloud Shield does that for you. You don't need RD Broker. Sentry does that for you. You don't need RD Gateway as well because the Cloud Shield does that for you. You don't need Duo because it's already integrated for us. So it all depends on how much work people are willing to do, right? And the level of complexity that they want to manage. So we have a lot of MSPs that are very happy with taking away. In fact, I remember when one ASCII conference that we went to in Michigan, I had one very savvy MSP that told me exactly what you said. Well, Peter, I already have RDS set up. I'm doing this, and so I understand. I mean, there's no one solution in the world that solves everybody's problems, right? I should very well know, Steve. The job of all of us is to find our market, find what we're trying to solve. In our case, simplicity is the hallmark of our technology. I would almost say that security, comes with it, but simplicity is actually what we're aiming for. Because if you remember what I told you early on, the reason why the company was founded wasn't because Citrix isn't there to do this, but the mid-market couldn't handle the complexity of Citrix. The cost is also an issue, but it's mostly the complexity. So we designed this product primarily for simplicity from the get-go. So this MSP I was telling you about, is now a customer of ours. He has easily over 18 customers, tenants, under his dashboard. And this is somebody that was already using RDS before. So it all depends on whether you want to deploy RDS broker gateway and web for all customers. You want to set up dual radio server to integrate for all those things, or you want to use our technology. So.
And so I just have a follow-up question because I want to make sure I understand it.
Sure.
With your tool, and let's say I connect remotely to a server,
Mm-hmm.
and I've got it set up to where I'm accessing an application.
Yes.
Don't I still need terminal server licensing in order to enable more than 2 active connections, or has that changed?
That hasn't changed. That Microsoft will not let us take that away from them. So you still have to conform to Microsoft licensing. Yeah.
Okay. And how does that work? Because to install that terminal server licensing,
Mm-hmm.
don't you still have to start setting up the terminal server service on the server?
No, you don't need to. So you just need to, like, for example, most people will install the terminal server licensing component on their domain controller, and that's it. So you don't need to go into. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Just by installing that licensing component.
Exactly. In fact, I think I may have it here.
Okay. And so just by installing that licensing component, that removes the ceiling, so to speak, so that way you can have more than 2 active people connected to that server at a time.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. So you can install the licensing component without installing all the other stuff that comes with the RDS infrastructure, which is the web, the gateway, and the broker. You don't need any of that stuff if you use our software. And people love that because and then the fact that we do pooling, we can automatically load balance the connection as well. These are all the things that people will want from an RDP infrastructure. We do all of those things, and we do it simpler, essentially. In fact, we don't need a database. So if we're going to set up an RDS infrastructure with more than 1 broker, if you're going to add a 2 broker, now you're dealing with a SQL database. How many MSPs want to do that? When you already have a cloud technology that does it all for you. So I think probably the broader answer to your question, the best answer to your broader question, Steve, is that we don't make a claim that we're the end all, be all, end all. We fill a specific niche. Our software is directed towards MSPs that want peace of mind and simplicity. So in other words, if an MSP and you want to simply connect your customers, remote workers, remote employees to their Office PC, Office terminal server, and they're using devices that you don't trust, and you don't want to put VPN in place, and you want multi-factor, and you want to do it in less than 2 hours, we're your solution. If you're an MSP that already understands all the RDS complexity, and you want to go get a different radio server, you don't mind doing all of the complexity, we may not be for you, which is okay, right? Because there's a solution for everyone.
So the last question I have for right now, is there a reason that an MSP would use your solution on an Azure server instead of WVD or TS Remote App or whatever through Azure?
Yes, I've seen 2 instances of that. One is for hybrid. We had one partner that has resources in AWS, and they already also supporting other customers in multiple platforms, and they wanted a single pane to manage all RDP stuff. So rather than give WVD to a customer, they bypassed all of the WVD complexity and the PowerShell and all the other stuff and just use our product. So they still stood up their multi-session Windows machines in the Azure. They didn't have to deploy an agent. They just have an Active Directory in there. They put our Sentry, and they're using our technology to manage everything. And then we had another one that has, this one is actually direct customer that has, they were going to go with WVD, but then they had issues with all the device redirection. and they were going to add vendors out of Colombia for remote work, and they were struggling with all the complexity of WVD, and they found us, and within 2 hours we got them going. Because with that technology, you can manage in a very finite, fine-grained method all of the device redirection. And you can block things from the admin level as well.
Okay.
Yep.
Is there anything else that you wanted to demo? Did you want to show us
Yes.
what it's like as the end user?
Yes, that's the next I'm going to show, and let me minimize and do that right now. So I'm going to go back to this page and go to so we have a help knowledge base. It's called help.trugrid.com. Everything that you need is on there. We have instant chat support, and I say that because it's actually more responsive than people calling the phone number. But in any event, so to get started, I'm going to do what I would direct a normal user to do or an admin to do, which is to pull up our Windows End Users Guide. So this is it. I'm not going to go through it all. I'm just going to click the link to download and install our connector software. Remember, Steve, during the demonstration when I was showing you this, I was showing you all the different connector that we have. Yep. This is the Windows version I'm installing right now.
Okay.
And I'm going to use it to log in as Steve. Okay.
Awesome.
And I just
installed what's that password again?
I'll share with you later on. Even if I gave it to you, you still couldn't use it without my MFA.
I know. I just like to screw with people.
Exactly.
I gotta make it fun, man.
I know. So this is me logging as Steve, and again, this password I'm entering is being checked against Active Directory because we don't.
Okay.
So the system said, okay, this is Steve's first time logging in. We have to Steve sets up his MFA. There's no way for you to go to continue now. And we tell you this step, you go to your mobile app store and download the authenticator or your preferred authenticator because you can use either one. And then we give you this unique code, which I'm going to take out my favorite authenticator right now, if you can see it. And I'm going to scan this code. And I'm going to get, I should get a push button here. So I may have used a user called Steve in the past too. Let me make sure that that's not the case. Let me try it one more time. Okay, yeah, I got it now. So I did my push, and you see how fast that went through. Now I'm going to put my cell phone number. This is for future reset. So if I change my handset, but my number is the same, and I haven't backed up my authenticator, this is a way for you to reset yourself without calling tech support. So I'm going to go ahead and let me make sure 847-910.
I was trying to mask that for you. That way, so I took your screen off so that way people didn't get your cell phone number.
Oh, I see. Thank you very much.
Because while I tease you about this password, I don't actually want.
You'd be surprised how many demos we did where his cell phone number has been laid out there for everybody.
So
webinars.
So here we are, Steve. You notice that as a user, within 2 minutes, essentially set up. I will agree that if you haven't done this like the 1,000 times I have, it may take you 5 minutes the first time, but it's pretty painless. And unlike VPN software, Steve, this is, easy stuff. And those are the two apps that I, presented to you. And I'm just going to connect to a machine. This is a one-time end user agreement. And your typical RDP connection will start momentarily, and it's actually going so fast. There we go. Do you see it going? Let's see it right here.
I see it looked locked up to me.
Exactly. Here it is.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Exactly.
So you're connected. So, the one thing, because I haven't done RDP in a while,
yes.
So let's talk about just the apps. So if we instead of a full-blown remote desktop, we did an app.
Yes.
How does that work if I'm thinking of an end user that has, maybe Crystal reports and a couple other things running with their ERP, and they want to be able to do this from their home computer with multiple screens.
Oh yeah, we support multiple screens. I can go here, go to settings, and I can choose Right now, full screen is the default. I can change it to full screen on all monitors. I can choose windowed mode. I can even support 4K monitors. I can support up to 8192 by 8192
So it's
res.
8K.
Yeah, 8K.
Well,
You could change your video quality. Every RDP setting that you could do it here. If there's an RDP option that Microsoft laid out, it can be done from our interface.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. We even have customers using Cisco VoIP. We had one insurance company during the pandemic where everybody uses Cisco VoIP on their PC in the office. But now they had to work from home, right? They have headsets connected to their personal computers that are not trusted, but they're able to use our microphone redirection. And I think what's the other one they were using? I think that was it. With that, they could use their headset, connect to their PC in the office, and use their Cisco dialer to do all their insurance calls, all the customer service calls. Yeah, through RDP.
And that works. Like, okay, so here, the last time that I've really relied on RDP, I think, the typical internet connection, people were thrilled if they had like 25 megs down and 2 megs up or something like that. Like, we're talking mid 2000s.
Yeah, that's 20 years ago you're talking about, I think, or maybe 15 years ago. So remote FX, if you've heard Microsoft, RDP has come a long way. In fact, it is in the Citrix world, this is the high-end world of enterprise remote access. We used to have that debate. Oh, I would laugh at RDP. Nobody does that anymore because RDP is feature for feature as good as it gets. And that's why Microsoft is betting on it for WVD. So it is a robust protocol. You can do a lot of things. Look at the device redirection. So this one is blocked by default for secure reasons. So I cannot redirect my printers from home unless the admin allows me. This is part of our zero trust. I cannot do copy and paste from my machine at home to the network. I cannot transfer files. I cannot map my USB disks. So there's no way for you to steal data unless you're, sharing to your Gmail or whatever, but you will not use our tool to do it. So there's no way virus can come from your home machine into this remote environment because take a look at we're using loopback through WebSockets. There's no IPsec tunnel. If I took the local IP of this PC, Steve, and try to RDP to it, let me first of all prove that copy and paste I just told you about. So I'm going to open Notepad on here, right? Let me see if I can paste something else. This is your URL.
Yeah.
Yeah, not what I copy remotely, right? Because so copy and paste is disabled. Okay, but let me now try to RDP directly to that IP address, right?
Okay.
And it's 10.200.1.88. It's not going to go anywhere because there's no tunnel, there's no IPsec, there's no VPN. We're using the vaulting technology brokered by Sentry on the back end. It's not public. This is all encapsulated traffic through 443. It's going to fail. It is pretty secure.
Because it's all WebSockets and it's not doing a VPN. You
got it. It's WebSockets. There's no, this is just a window into a remote machine. There's no other, that's where it ends. There's no compromise on my home network that would transfer to this remote desktop. None.
Okay. So I gotta say, I could see where there would be a use case for this.
There are multiples. There are multiple, Steve. That's what our customers told us. In fact, let me shock you though. When Jason and I developed the product, we actually did not think that VPN replacement would be our #1 seller. Surprisingly, the market told us that. We designed a product for simplified RDP without exposing your firewall port, without all the complexity of RDS host gateway. But the market told us no. We have all these people using untrusted devices. they want to connect to RDP, but they don't want to use company VPN because you can't do that. We find that that's a very big use case. In fact, it's our number one use case right now, surprisingly. Yeah, I'm going to connect to the app. I know we're getting to top of the I think we're about 30 minutes left, I think. So I'm logging in now to Word. Word is as a published app, right? In this case, right? Which you were asking the question earlier, right? So it's launching right now, and I'm going to put it over. So my other screen.
And then once you're connected, like once you have Word up and running, and let's say you tried opening up QuickBooks, as long as they're both installed on the same Windows server, you don't have to reconnect again.
Exactly.
QuickBooks would open up really quickly.
Exactly. Same, yeah, you understand persistence, where you're on the same server, it would open. Unless the admin they'll be published could be from a different server, obviously, right? Then it would open from that server.
And let me tell you, I took over a Citrix environment at a client, and the former Citrix admin had 5 Citrix servers set up. They were running like Goldmine and QuoteWorks and Microsoft Office, and just, they had all these applications. And I get it, they needed the applications. But like, of the 5 Citrix servers, like one of them was a Goldmine server, and one of them was a QuoteWorks server, and then like 2 of them had all the Office. And people, and we're talking back in like 06. So they didn't have all these features back then. So people were pretty ticked off when you weren't able to copy and paste from Word over to QuoteWorks over to Goldmine. Like it was so frustrating. So I ended up selling them 2 new servers, consolidated their 5 servers down to 2, and I had all of the applications installed on both servers, and they were never happier.
Fantastic, because you kind of know what you're doing, and that's the kind of stuff we're talking about with complexity, right? So there are different markets for different products. So to kind of buttress what you just said, I don't think that TruGrid was designed to compete with TeamViewer and LogMeIn, even though some people use that for remote access. But I will be hard pressed to find, Steve, a company that has 100 employees that are using TeamViewer as their primary remote access technology.
No, and I gotta say, like, what my initial thought was, this is stupid. I would never use TruGrid. I've got whatever, I've got Screen Connect or ConnectWise Control or whatever you want to call it, right?
Exactly.
But you're not actually designing this as the use case for like tech support.
No.
This isn't here to get rid of Splashtop.
Not at all.
This is here to be an alternative to TS Remote App and Citrix and whatever else.
Right.
Although when you're at the Citrix conventions, you don't ever say you're a competitor of Citrix.
No, we don't say that. Or
you somehow compliment it.
Exactly. Or Steve, the one we found, the market told us. Or if you need to have people connect their PC in the office from home, but you don't want to give them VPN because you don't trust that remote system. Yes. That's an amazing use case. Yeah. So what we found is I should start getting to that 50 users, 7,500. You're not going to put LogMeIn on every PC in the office or every VDI in the cloud for your home employees to connect to it. It sounds, difficult to manage. RDP is built in. Use RDP. Or if RDP is too small for you, you know what you're doing, go for Citrix at the high end. And you can manage the complexity. You used to be a Citrix guy. You did it. You know how complex it can be, right? Compared to
and let me tell you, they kind of threw me into the deep end with Citrix. I had zero training on Citrix. It was all like learning how to swim, man. I was tossed in, and I worked under the guy that was mismanaging it, and every time I asked him a question, because I was trying to understand like why he had it set up the way it was set up, because I try to understand the inner workings, and sometimes when I ask questions like that, people assume I'm trying to be some kind of a-hole about it, and I'm not. I'm just trying to understand, like, okay, I just don't understand why you set it up this way. To me, it feels like there could be a better way.
I understand what you mean. Yeah.
So let's talk about that, you know? So
Yeah.
he didn't appreciate that. He told me to go put a label on a sticker on every single cable sitting on the shelf.
Wow.
So I put a sticker on the box that just held all the cables because they were all the same size and everything. And he told me, no, that's not good enough. You need to put a sticker on every single cable.
Wow.
And I said, so let me clarify. You want to waste my time and the owner of this small company's money by having me put a sticker on every single one of these cables because I made you sad?
Wow.
And he didn't like that response. So he sent me home.
Oh, wow.
And then he told the owner that he wanted me to be fired. And the owner said, if we have to choose between the two of you, we're not going to fire Steve. So that made me feel good. And then he got fired a few months later.
Well, it's
and
funny.
then I took over Citrix and completely overhauled their environment, and everyone was happy.
You were trying to show him a better way. You should have just embraced someone who was trying to make things better, right? Some people just can't stand.
Yeah.
You know, it's the problem. So Steve, we appreciate you giving us this platform, to be honest with you. Brandon and I do, our entire company, we appreciate you. So we're here to support the MSP community. Thanks for the good work that you're doing as well to promote and showcase available technologies to MSPs out there. And have been wanting to get on your program for a while. I'm happy we finally made it happen. So thank you very much.
Me too. Absolutely. And Peter, where are you from?
I'm originally from Nigeria. I moved to the United States over 30 years ago.
Okay.
So
I'm a fan of Trevor Noah. I have to ask a question. Those animals that look like horses with the black and white stripes.
Mm-hmm. Zebras.
So you say zebra, not zebra.
Not zebra. I say zebra because I'm Americanized, right? Because when I came to this country, it was zebra. It was Route 66. Now I say Route 66.
So over in Africa, you would say zebra. That's the appropriate.
Yeah, I would say zebra because the pronunciation is mostly British. Like Britain colonized. Yeah, so most of the tonations come from England.
Well, and I figure, you guys are the ones that have most of them. So however you want to pronounce it is how we should probably pronounce it.
But remember when you're in Rome, act like Roman.
All right, Peter, Brandon, thank you so much for coming out here and doing this with me. I really had a lot of fun, and I hope that everyone here has learned something neat about TruGrid and an alternative to terminal services or Citrix, and even just working remotely from home in a zero trust environment. I love that.
One thing I should add, Steve, Gartner, which you probably know Gartner, that organization. Yeah. Okay. So they actually said, this is before the pandemic, that by 2023, over 60% of corporations will replace that VPN solution with a zero trust solution. Okay. And the reason is actually very simple, because every VPN endpoint is an extension of your company network.
Okay.
So to give an example, we took on a manufacturing company that during the pandemic they sent, in fact, they were growing, they're doubling in size because they make product that actually helps with the pandemic. So they issued laptop to every employee in the company, but then they were remoting to over VPN into the company terminal server for their ERP applications. Remember, these are corporate devices, managed corporate devices, antivirus, everything, but they were connecting over VPN nonetheless, right? Well, an infection on the home Wi-Fi infected the laptop and traversed the VPN into their office and ransomed all their files, including their backup. The only option they had to keep the company going was to pay ransom, $250,000 they paid.
Gosh.
And then after they unlocked the files, they found us. And we disconnected their VPN. They've been using TruGrid ever since. About 75
Okay.
users. Yeah.
That's wow.
Yeah. So
wow.
Yeah. So VPN is known now to be a dangerous thing, even when you have company issue devices. People think if I have company issue device, I should be safe. Well, what about the Wi-Fi that that company device is on? It could be my wife can get an infection to malware, ransomware. It can affect my laptop on the same Wi-Fi. We all know antivirus are reactive, right? There's no perfect. Okay. So for that reason, and I'm not suggesting that remote desktop is the only way. People just have to understand their technology landscape, right? If you're all fully cloud, if everything you want to do is cloud-based, you don't need ERP app to connect to, then you better make sure that all your endpoints are well managed. I can't plug in USB. I can't copy data off. All those things. If I'm using OneDrive Sync or Dropbox, I better make sure that a ransomware that affects that mounted drive, I have a backup to restore back if anything happens. So there has to be a solution for every case, right? Our case is if your use case is that your employees are going to connect to a Windows PC, a Windows server, terminal server, VDI in the cloud, and you want to do it the safest way, the most secure way, the simplest way, and the fastest way, we should talk to us.
Excellent.
Thank you very much.
Brandon, do you have anything that you'd like to leave everyone with?
We're a great company to work with. Our support is awesome. We work with
that's what they all say, Brandon.
Ours is. I promise you can test it out. No, we're a great company to work with. I love working with MSPs. I like all of our partners, and let us know if we need to set up a demo or get you started on a trial.
In fact, one thing, Steve, that we learned during the pandemic was our MSP was shocked. We worked 24/7, Steve. We made sure we were onboarding people at midnight.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So right now still we provide 24/7 coverage. 9 to 5 is instant, and outside of 9 to 5, there's a toll-free number, and you can use a chat line. The chat might be slow, it might be 30 minutes response time. But if you have an emergency, there's a toll-free number that is answered by a live human being, and they will find the next available engineer to take care of you. So
that is really nice.
Yeah, support is a big thing for us. So
and weekends,
really nice.
Yeah, and weekends too. We work weekends and holidays. So
Christmas morning,
whatever it takes.
I open up that new laptop and I need to get TruGrid installed on it because Santa gave me a laptop.
Mm-hmm.
That's why we advertise Peter's cell phone number on all of our demos.
Exactly. Yeah.
Love it. Yeah.
I'm very fanatical about our support. Thank you, Steve.
As you should. I've got down below. I've got the email address, sales@trugrid.com. If you guys are interested in learning more about their very mysterious MSP pricing, Brandon or one of the guys over in the sales team will be able to help you out. And hey, if you guys make any, I don't know, neat upgrades to the product or whatever, if you guys ever want to come back sometime, just let me know.
We will. When we release our support for Azure AD, we're going to come back to you.
Yeah.
Yes.
That sounds fun.
Yes. Thank you so much, Steve.
All right. Well, everyone, thanks for coming and watching our episode. I will see you all at the next one.
Take care, Steve. Thanks, everyone who's watching. We appreciate you.
Everyone.